Now, Larry Summers. He was Treasury Secretary for former President Bill Clinton and director of the National Economic Council under President Obama. So, Secretary Summers, we're at 7% inflation, and obviously it's a nearly 40-year high. Um, and, you heard that woman there, right? You want wage increases to make up for the price increases. The problem is when one starts to follow the other. And you have been really worried about inflation for a long time. How serious are price increases like the ones we're seeing?
Look, we have a real problem. I think it was a foreseeable problem a year ago, given the amount of money that was infused into the economy. But it took 7 years after the Vietnam War started to get inflation up to this level. Inflation's now 50% higher than it was when Richard Nixon imposed price controls to stop what was seen as a terrible inflation at that time. I don't think there's much question that we have an inflation problem that's not usefully thought of as simply a transitory issue. The real concern is that we're going to get a wage price spiral in which higher wages lead to higher prices and higher prices lead to higher wages, and we're off to the races. And that is still a substantial risk starting from where we are. I can't conceive that we're going to see the kind of 16% mortgage rates that you referred to from the early 80s, Erin, but I sure do think that interest rates are going to have to rise significantly from where they are. And we're going to have to get used to the fact that our problem is not that our economy is too weak. Our problem is that our economy is too strong. There's too much demand relative to the supply capacity of our economy. There's not a lot we can do to change the supply capacity in the short run.
Right.
And that means if we don't want to have just rising inflation, we're going to have to limit demand.
So let me ask you, because, okay, look, when you adjust wages for inflation right now, the problem actually looks in a sense even worse, even though inflation was slightly less of a problem coming month to month in December than it was from a year ago. But adjusted for inflation, wages were down about 2.5%. And that's part of the reason that the Fed has this fear, right? What are they going to do, right? Raising interest rates when real wages are dropping is really awful for a lot of people. And the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, who you've been calling on to deal with this for at least a year, is still only talking about if he needs to raise interest rates. Here he is today.
In a way, high inflation is a severe threat to the achievement of maximum employment and to achieving a long expansion that can give us that. If we have to raise interest rates more over time, we will.
If?
Look, nobody knows the future with certainty, but I think there's every reason to expect that interest rate increases are going to be necessary. I think it's hard to believe that, given that we've got 7% inflation, raising rates from 0 to 1 or even from 0 to 2 is going to be sufficient to contain the inflation. The main scenario where you wouldn't have to raise interest rates is one that nobody wants, where we start to see our financial institutions and our asset prices implode. If you saw a sudden decline in stock prices, for example, then you wouldn't want to be raising interest rates. But that's hardly an outcome that would suggest economic stability or economic health. So I think we're looking at a situation right now that is fundamentally unsustainable. And the question is going to be, can we achieve a gradual breaking of the economy that permits this overheating to ease and inflation to come down? And
Okay.
I sure hope we can. And I got a lot of respect for Jay Powell. But by continuing to believe this narrative of transitory inflation and it's all going to be okay, we've gotten ourselves way behind where it's much harder to deal with than it would have been if we had understood more fully what our problem was 6 months ago.
All right. Well, Larry, I really appreciate your time and I thank you. The next topic, of course, for
Thank
everyone
you.
to talk about is as interest rates go up, when your debt is greater than the entire size of your economy, then your cost of borrowing is going up and up for our entire country. There are very serious questions to consider for all Americans.